everyone, welcome back to this week's Future of Work Weekly Report. I am your host, founder and CEO of Grapevine Software, the virtual office platform for your remote and hybrid workforce to stay connected, informed, and engaged from anywhere in the world. Today, we're going to be talking about a Forbes article written by Nirit Cohen, hopefully I said that correct, published November 18th, 2024, earlier this week. And the article title is 2025, Embracing That We Don't Have the Future of Work Figured Out. And so that title obviously intrigued me. I wanted to understand what was going to be in this article. And so we read it and we chose to do it for this week's Future of Work Weekly Report. And we're going to be unpacking what Cohen's Forbes article talks about, which is how we can embrace the knowledge of knowing that we don't have it fully figured out, it being the future of work. And it's kind of reframing the uncertainty of today's workplace as an opportunity to innovate and evolve. And so that's what we're going to be talking about as we dive right into it with highlight number one, which is discovery over completion. So the key insight from the article here is that 2025 isn't about solving the future of work. It's about testing, learning, and iterating as we shape the workplace of tomorrow. Now, just to start with the title and the first key insight, I think we know more about the future of work than we did, obviously, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. And so I do think that there are some companies out there that we can look at as guidance. Atlassian, GitLab are the ones that come to mind. Spotify. These are large companies, though, right? These are huge companies, and they're paving the way. They're able to do certain things that maybe smaller organizations can't do. And so I think that we do have a certain amount of the future of work figured out. It's just how can it be applicable to the majority of people and companies. But I do believe that she is very right in the sense that it is about testing, it is about learning, and it is about iterating on what we learned through the testing. First, are we doing the right testing, right? What should we be testing to fully understand the future of work? And as we continue to go through this future of work report, I think that she hits it on the nail with it's not necessarily about outputs like we tend to think about it, like numbers or hours in the office, right? That's an output. But it's more so about outcomes. So what are we producing as an organization, as a team, as an individual contributor? What is our productivity, right? And then there's a couple of other things that come in here that we'll talk about, but innovation, a few other things I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but we'll get to them. But I do want to call out something. So in this article that we read, it didn't have any statistics. And so whenever we're doing the future of work weekly report, we typically like to have statistics. So we went out and found some to add to each highlight that can put numbers to the importance of this. So the statistics that we went and found is one's from Harvard Business Review. It says 83% of leaders believe that experimentation is critical to driving organizational innovation, but only 23% feel their workplace actively fosters a culture of discovery. And so what this is calling out is leaders understand that experimentation is critical for driving organizational innovation. But what they also are saying is that their workplace is not taking that into account. And it could be a mixture of things. It could be that we don't have enough resources. Again, this is where being a smaller organization is important. Whenever we read these types of things, how can we actually make this generalize to the entire population? But what we're seeing here is that we know what we need to do to create more innovation, but we're just not doing it. And so it could be lack of resources, as I was mentioning. It could be that the amount of workload that we have doesn't necessarily allow for this type of innovation approach. But I would encourage us to think of Google during the Google days, like it was like the startup of the future, right? And they allowed their employees 20% of free time, or I can't remember exactly what they called it, but basically one day out of the week, they could work on anything that they wanted to. And it didn't have to be related to work. It didn't have to be related to Google. It didn't anything. Like they could just work on anything. And that fostered innovation, that fostered creativity. And a lot of those projects turned into actual products that could be used by, and was and is used by Google today. That Gmail is an example, right? So what we have to figure out with the future of work in this case is how or what do we need to test to make sure that we do find the future of work in 2025 or heading into 2026? How can we make sure that we learn from the test that we're putting out there? We have to be able to measure it, right? That's just one of the simple things. And then once we understand the findings, how can we iterate it to really shape the workplace of tomorrow? Now, at Grapevine, we're specifically building for the future of work. And we have our own vision that we are shooting for, and that's what we're going to go for. But we also have customers now, and we have to make sure that we're taking the feedback from them and understanding that balance of, okay, this is what we think the future of work should be, and this is what we're building. But then right now, this is what our customers need, and it is a must have. And so it's balancing those two things, right? So we're going to be testing, we're going to be learning, we're going to be iterating on our own product. And companies that are focused on the future of work can do this as well. And we encourage other companies who aren't necessarily focused on the future of work to do this, or they could reap some repercussions, right? Or consequences. Which leads me into the second stat of highlight number one, which is the average tenure of younger employees have decreased to 2.8 years. Bureau of Labor Statistics signaling that workplaces must continually adapt to retain talent. And that kind of leads into what I was saying before. If you don't adapt to the future of work, it does seem from the studies and the data that we've reported on all this year that if you don't offer flexibility, these employees are most likely going to go somewhere else. So you have to take this into consideration. And again, it goes back to testing. It doesn't necessarily need to be, hey, we're going to go 100% remote, or, you can work whenever you want to. It could just be, if you need to have flexible arrangements for a week, reach out to us. If you need to have, I don't know, surgery and you need to work from home for 3 months, whatever, like the ability to have these things, you can test it out. Or you're going to say, hey, if we're going to test this out, we're going to ask you to come into the office 3 days a week. It doesn't matter what days, just let us know. And the other 2 you can have off, right? And then what you might find is that the entire company comes together and says, I think we want to work Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we want to have Mondays and Fridays as 100% remote every week, right? So it's just this testing and iterating that Nirit is talking about here. And you're going to have specific goals. Your employees in your company are going to have specific needs. And so talk to them and understand what it is that you're testing out, why you're testing it out, and then be transparent with your organization so they understand, like, okay, this isn't necessarily permanent. This is something that we're testing out. After 6 months, we're going to have a better understanding of it. And from there, you can choose if that's the best approach. So I think that's what she's basically saying here, which is discovery over completion, meaning we're trying to discover what it is that works best for our company, our culture, our employees, our customers, all of the things that are important to run a business. And from there, you can learn from that testing, and then you can iterate if you need to, right? So that's what she means by that, in my interpretation. Let's add that part. Okay, highlight number 2, collaboration over control. I really like that. I think that is more important than anything. But the key insight is leaders must empower teams to co-create solutions rather than dictating top-down strategies. I'm going to go ahead and go to the statistics here. Teams with high trust in leadership are 50% more likely to innovate effectively. That's from Gallup. Organizations that promote collaborative decision-making see a 34% improvement in employee satisfaction and engagement. That's from Deloitte. And so basically what they're saying here is that instead of micromanaging, or instead of the old way of managing, which is my way or highway, I say it, you do it. If you don't, get out. Instead of that, bring in this collaborative effort for decision making, for strategies in the organization. What are we going to focus on? What are we going to do? All these kind of things. We've said this time and time again, that if you bring in an employee, or you bring in employees to the conversation, and you allow their voices to be heard, 1, they feel empowered, 2, they feel heard, and 3, the decision that is made, even if it goes against what they suggested, they are more likely to support it and less likely to resist it, because they had a say in what was going to happen. Again, whether or not you choose to go with their suggestion. So this is what we mean by collaboration over control. This is what employees have been trying so hard to get for the longest time, right? And that's why a lot of these managers that are maybe a little bit outdated in their thinking are having such a hard time adapting to the future of work. Because the reason, in some cases, that they wanted to be a leader or a manager is because they wanted that control, they wanted that power, they wanted that authority. But what remote work and flexible work does is it removes that control from the manager. Right? And so those managers have to adapt, or they have to force people back into the office so they can have that control. And that's why I roll my eyes so many times whenever people are saying, no, we're bringing people back into the office for culture, for productivity. We want people to be able to see each other, for creativity, innovation. No, it's not. That's not why they're bringing them back to the office. I can guarantee it. Right. And so I say it a lot, but remote work and flexible work balances that power, right? It gives the manager and the leaders and the company this amount of power, but then it also gives the remote or the employee the balance of power as well, right? And now that other companies are offering this, it gives them the ability, them being the employee, it gives the employee the ability to choose to go work somewhere else. It's not that easy. You know, got to go through the interviews, got to actually get an interview first and then do all that stuff. But if your company doesn't offer this approach, and then this company over here in the same industry has a position available, and that person is very qualified, they get an interview, they're going to go over there because they have that flexibility opposed to what you're trying to say, right? And so we need to be able to take the collaboration approach over control, and you're going to see the benefits. So that's just another call out that she mentions here. And then we have the Gallup and Deloitte statistics as well. But let's go ahead and go over to highlight number 3, which is adaptability over rigidity. And we might be repeating ourselves here, but adaptability over rigidity. So the key insights: flexibility isn't just about hybrid policies, it's about embedding agility into workplace culture. And so some of the statistics that we saw was companies with adaptable frameworks are 3 times more likely to exceed financial targets. And then the second one, and that's from McKinsey and Company. And then the second statistic for highlight number 3 is remote and hybrid work structures increase employee retention by 25% on average. That's from Global Workplace Analytics. So what they're saying here is that flexibility isn't just about having a hybrid policy or a flexible policy or a remote policy, but it's about how you operate as an organization. And whenever I was reading this, one of the things, it reminded me, one of the things that I constantly do, because I've been in strategy and operations for, I guess now the majority of my career, and I call processes, but I always remind the people who are looking at these processes that they are more guidelines. And the reason that that is important is because if you look at a process, most people roll their eyes at processes because they do think that they're super rigid. And what I always say is a guide. The reason that I look at this process as a guideline is that there are always going to be different things that come up. For example, in revenue operations, like here's our sales process. Here are discovery questions. Here's objection handling approaches. Here is the framework that we use. Here is XYZ. But there are going to be outliers. And when those outliers arise, don't be afraid to navigate outside of what is normal. This is, in a perfect world, this is what it is, right? And in a real world, this is a guideline because you can be agile with your approach. You can take Zappos is a great example for people who are familiar with Zappos. You know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a book. I'm not going to be able to find it. Oh yeah. Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. He was the founder of Zappos, and the way that they let their customer service people just do whatever they needed to. For example, there was an example. Well, the one that gets out there a lot is that there was a customer success person or a customer service person who talked to the person for like 8 hours during the day, and it wasn't there wasn't a consequence of negativity. It was actually praised because that person is going to be a Zappos customer for life. I can guarantee it. But then the other one is where somebody caught in and they did the customer service thing. And then the customer service said, "Is there anything else that I can help with?" And he said, "Well, you can send me a pizza." And he was joking, right? He was joking. But then a few hours later, maybe like a few minutes later, 30 minutes, whatever, hour, the guy got a pizza delivered to him from that customer service person. So the guidelines approach or the agility approach is important because it gives the employee the ownership of what they're able to do, what they're capable of doing without feeling the need to ask permission. And so basically what you're doing here is you're allowing humans to be adults at work, right? I've heard of workplaces where people have to ask to use the restroom. That is crazy. We are human people, right? We should be given the ability to act as adults. And now, if somebody takes advantage of it, then yeah, there probably is going to be consequences. But it's kind of like Google saying don't be evil and actually meaning it, right? And so just treat people like humans, treat employees like adults, and reap the benefits in the long run. But to come back to the actual thing is adaptability over rigidity. So just something to think about as we continue to navigate the future of work in 2025. So let me go ahead and summarize this. We're going to mainly be summarizing the statistics just because those are important. That's how I think. So 83% of leaders emphasize the importance of experimentation, but less than a quarter have systems in place to foster it. So before we can even get to testing, learning and iterating, we have to create a culture, and your company has to allow for people to be able to get to the point of testing, get to the point of analyzing that test so you can learn from it. And then whenever you learn from it, iterate to test it again, or to test it again, right? So that 83% knowing what needs to be done needs to make sure that they step up and increase the number of people or number of companies making it available for innovation to actually take place in their company. All right. Second call out for the summarization: collaboration drives satisfaction. Teams that co-create are 34% more engaged and aligned. Just think about that. What could you do with a more aligned organization, a more aligned team? I mean, the amount of things that every time that I talk about alignment, I constantly go back to redundancy, rework, duplicative work, just people not knowing what this hand is doing and this hand are doing. And so sometimes they do the same thing. Sometimes they go completely different directions. And it just causes this disruption. And it's a lot of wasted time. It could cause delay in projects or timelines. And it definitely can cause frustration in employees. And that only affects your retention numbers. It affects your bottom line numbers. It affects so much that a lot of people don't even think about that, right? And so the last one is adaptable workplaces not only survive, but thrive with 3 times higher chances of financial success. So basically what they're saying is you need to be able to create that adaptability, that agility in your organization. Look at processes as guidelines, not necessarily as do as I say or do it my way or anything like that, but give employees the ability to be able to have that empowerment and make decisions on their own. And I'll end this on this. I was watching, I can't remember what it was, but it was Brian Chesky, CEO of Airbnb, founder of Airbnb. And obviously he's now known for founder mode. And I heard him in the interview talking about how that he doesn't, I don't know if he said it like this, but he said that he doesn't believe in autonomy. And he doesn't think that employees actually want autonomy. And it was the first time that I fully disagreed with Brian Chesky. I think he's a great founder and CEO. I think the way that he's running Airbnb is extremely important and something that a lot of people can learn from. And we've praised him on this channel before. But what I do want to say is that autonomy is actually what employees want. It's what they say. I think his definition of autonomy was a little bit off, because his definition of autonomy was like, okay, this is what you're here for, go do it. But that's not actually autonomy. Autonomy fits within these boundaries. And the employee understands the company's expectations, the team goals, and their individual goals. Now, once an employee understands what those things are for them, that's when autonomy comes into place, right? And autonomy in this case is the ability to get whatever it is that they need to get done in the way that they prefer to get it done. That's the most simplistic description or definition of autonomy that I can give. But it's not a free-for-all where it's like, hey, Zach, you're hired to do this and go get it, right? That actually causes frustration. And that's not full autonomy in the sense of how we use it in work. And so, again, whenever I bring these things up, I know that these people have tons more of experience. Maybe as I grow with Grapevine, I'll change my perspective on it. But I am coming at this with almost a decade of experience in the research on the happy productive worker thesis, which included, at least in mine, was the job characteristics model from 1976 of Jackman and Odom, or Hackman and Odom. And that is where we first hear that employee motivation, employee productivity, employee satisfaction, one of the factors and key factors is autonomy. And then we see it again whenever we look at Daniel H. Pink's book, Drive, what really motivates us, right? In purpose, autonomy, mastery. And so it's been repeated over and over again. And it's not just theoretical. We see this in actual practice. So I just wanted to call that out as I end this week's Future of Work Weekly Report, because I do think that it is relative and relevant for this topic as we continue to figure out what the future of work is. Obviously, we think that Grapevine's virtual office platform is going to take us there and allow for discovery over completion, collaboration over control, and adaptability over rigidity. So check us out if you haven't looked into us yet. But I'll go ahead and stop talking. Thanks so much for watching this week's Future of Work Weekly Report. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave some comments if you have any questions, or if you want to see something different from us, leave it in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share with any other Future of Work pioneers out there. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.